Okay, so now we talk about the tools, no, here in 3D Studio Max. Recently, we have talked about the navigations, how you view objects or how you see and even move around within the 3D space, such as zooming and panning. So this time, let's talk about the tools. Okay, so moving on to the tools, let us go here. First, the selection, so that we can use the tools. First off, how do you select objects here in 3ds Max? Well, you can select in various ways, such as a simple click and you will be able to select objects, or a simple click and drag. Okay, so this is what you call picking. When you pick an object or when you select by clicking, you pick it. Click and drag is the region select. Whichever touches, as you can see, the marquee that is created, whichever you touch or whichever object gets touched by that, it's already selected. Okay. You can control the type of marquee selection or the mode of the marquee selection that you have here. For example, I have, or by default, it is rectangular. So you can click and drag and it's rectangular. Or you can switch it to circular marquee. When you click and drag, it's going to be circular. Or when you click and choose, let's say, lasso, this is preferable on the top view. So let's say I have several scenes here. If I click and then start clicking, so I can just run across those objects, double click at the end, and they are already selected. So that is your polygonal lasso. Again, you just click, hold, and then drag, and then you can just click onto the next, and then click onto the next, and then double click, and you have them selected. Another is the freehand lasso. The freehand lasso allows you to click and drag, and it's a bit more manual. So that's the freehand lasso. And then you have here the spray paint selection. The spray paint selection is you have like a handle here, a cursor handle, that when you click hold and then you drag, it appears. That's the spray paint. So that's at the bottom. When you click hold and then you drag and you touch objects, so that's how you can select with your spray paint selection. You can also deselect, no? For example, if I have deselected, I can press Alt. Alt is the deselect mode of 3ds Max. Now, for example, if I have all of these objects selected and I want to deselect some of them, I'll just press Alt, drag, and touch those that I don't want to be selected. And then that's it. Or I can press Control. Control is additive or additional or add to selection. All I need to do is click and click and click, and those are going to be added. So remember that. You can control the different modes of your select range selection, no, or region selection by these selection functions, or the shortcut for that is Q. Observe carefully. When I press Q, they also change. See, in pressing Q. And then if I would like to add, I will just press Control. As you can see, the cursor becomes or adds a plus into it. There's a plus sign onto the selection. Okay, so it becomes additive. If I press Alt, there's a negative sign onto it, so that means it becomes subtractive selection mode. Another way of selecting objects here is directly on the objects list. It's here on your left or on the left of your screen. It is similar to Maya's outliner. where the list of objects are found. And as you can see, you can easily select by the object's name. So it is advisable that you select objects by their name. Or, sorry, it is advisable to name objects when you're creating them to keep your scene organized. And then there are some options here. For example, you can hide objects directly from this list. You can click that eyeball or eye icon, makes the object hidden or makes the object unhidden or appear. On the right side, the frozen or the freeze option, you can just simply click that and the objects becomes frozen. So to further explain that, for example, if I want this teapot to be a template or a reference and I don't want it to be moved or selected, all I need to do is just select it here and turn on the teapot. Oh, sorry, the frozen or freeze option. And then it will not be selectable. It will just be seen there as gray. Okay? And then also we can hide them. Objects that you don't want to see or blocking your view can be hidden instead of being deleted because you'll never know when you will need the object. Okay, so this is your object list, no? Wherein you can select also objects and you have your freeze and show and hide options. Okay, so now that we know how to select objects and also the other options in selecting objects, let's say I will select the teapot and then I will just go for this. I will right click and then in this quad menu, this is the quad menus. So when I select an object, I will right click and in the top right quarter or in the top right quad, I have this option, hide unselected. So this means all of the objects that are not selected are going to be hidden. So now I have that. So that's a bit quicker. No? Next is, I'm doing this so that we can focus on the tools. The tools is the move tool, for example. So there are three universal tools here in 3ds Max. I call it universal or core tools because these tools doesn't change. These tools are also present in other software such as Maya, Blender, no, and other 3D packages, Cinema 4D. So these tools are also being used or present there. So let's go for the move tool, and then as you can see, what appears is a gizmo. I can press F3, F4 so that I can clearly see the gizmo. The gizmo is like a compass. It tells you the direction of the objects. For example, let me just press the plus sign so that it will grow or it will become bigger. Minus sign shrinks it also, but it's only the appearance of the gizmo. Okay, the gizmo tells you the direction where you can move the object. For example, if it is on the x-axis, the x-axis is the horizontal movement. If you will look at the front view, as I move on the x-axis, that is the horizontal movement or the x or the left and right direction of the object. If I will go for the y-axis, if I select it, the y-axis is the forward and backward movement of the axis. As you can see in the top view, the direction going here is forward. So if I move it that way, that's the forward and this is the backward direction. So that's the y-axis, the forward and the backward. Okay? And then the z-axis or the blue one is the vertical movement or the elevation. It is the up and down movement of your object. So remember those. Even in color code, X for red or X is left and right, Y is forward and backward, Z axis is up and down. Now, if you would like to move the object in a free manner, because when you move the objects by axis, you are moving them straight in a straight line or in a straight direction. But if you would like to drag it in a free manner, you can select this square or box at the center of the gizmo. If I click that and highlight it, I click and drag, it will allow me to do a free drag, a free movement or to any direction of my object. Okay, so you can do that. Or if you would like to be free on particular directions, such as here, two directions only, forward and backward, and then the sideways. So I can do that. As you can see, as I am moving it, I am not being able to move the elevation. But the same case, if I would like to do some elevation movement, going front and back, or elevation movement going left and right, I can do those certain combination of movements. But if I want a really free, I can use the center selection there. Okay. Next thing, so that is your move tool, the select and move. But for example, there are some conditions that are need to be met. For example, there are some precise positionings that are needed to be done for the object. For example, if you were instructed to move the object at the center of the 3D space, how will that be possible? You can go to the top view and see that there is the center of 3D space. So I can easily drag that, I can easily move it here, but is that precise enough, right? And then when I go to the front view, I can see that the object is still elevated. So I have to move it again. Okay, so how do we move objects precisely onto their location? There are also tools or tool partners to assist you on that. For example, okay, so the tools partner to assist you on moving objects here in 3ds Max precisely, or one of the tool partners that can help you do that, no, is here the UCS. The UCS, or the User Coordinate System, once you have your Move tool activated or Move tool in use, that means the UCS is also in use or active. If I will look at it, you see the X slot here represents also the X axis, and then the Y the same, and also the Z axis. No, so it is representing your move tool. Now, if I type in here 0, I'll press tab to shift to the other axis and type in 0, and then I'll press tab and also type 0. So as you can see, now I have 0 in all of my axis, right? And that means my object is at the center of 3D space. If I go to any viewport, it will appear as such. So that means the UCS allows you to move your objects at the center of 3D space at a precise coordinate. So yes, these are coordinates whenever you are moving whenever you are using your move tool. The UCS values are called coordinates. So if you are familiar with the Cartesian plane during your high school math, then that will help you out further in or at least that gives you familiarity in working with the UCS. Okay? So that is one partner. So for example, if I type in here 10, so that means that's a movement of 10 in your grid. But the question is, what does that 10 means? Does it mean 10 pixels? No. What is that 10 coordinate units, or what units are the coordinates really using right now? Okay, so to know what units the coordinates are currently using here in 3ds Max, all you need to do is go to customize, and then you go to your units setup. Again, in the menus, just go to customize, unit setup, and then when you click that, you will see this, the system unit setup. When you click this, the system unit setup, it will tell you something. Currently, the system unit scale, or what is currently being used now, is centimeter. That is what's being used right now. So this means I'll just cancel this and cancel anything so that nothing will be changed. This means the units that I am punching here, for example, if I said here 20 on the x-axis, so that means it has moved 20 centimeters. And let's say 20 in the y-axis, it has moved forward to 20 centimeters. And lastly, if I go 50, it means it has moved upwards, or it has been raised 50 centimeters from the ground level. So remember, even though that there is, or there are no labels of units here, by default, if you go to customize, unit setup, system unit setup, this means that the current units are in centimeters. Now, can we change this? Of course, you can change this. You just simply click and choose whichever unit is required of you. And then it will, or 3ds Max will follow along. No? But for me, the default centimeters is okay. So I will just press cancel just to make sure that it remains within the default centimeter units. So now that I know that these are all in centimeters, I can now just type in here 000 so that it goes back to its center in 3D space. Next, just another segue, no, but we are still in the move tool. And please remember that the move tool partner is the UCS, but also the UCS has a partner along with the move tool. And that partner is the grid. We mentioned here that when you move 10 centimeters, it is also moving in accordance to the grid. Okay, so this simply means I will access also the grid. I can access the grid by going here. Here is your snaps tool, and then I will select that and I will right click it. There. When I select the snap tool and right click it, you will see the home grid. The home grid is also showing us something. It means of the grid spacing. There. So please be mindful of this, because if you will adjust, for example, if I am going to adjust the unit setup to, let's say, centimeters or millimeters, I must also adjust the grid spacing at the same time. Okay? So please be mindful of that so that your measurements will be in real or actual scale. Okay? Yeah, so just be mindful of that, because I usually experience that some adjust the unit setup but they do not adjust the grid settings. So adjust it accordingly. Okay? Yeah. Now, we will further talk about that in our coming lessons. Now, let us go to the other. No? Let me go back here, back to zero. Let us go to the other tools partner of our move tool. The other tool partner of the move tool, aside from the UCS, is also this, the snaps tool, or the shortcut is S. When I press S, the snaps tool turns on and off. Okay? When I right click it, as I've shown you earlier, the snaps tool has settings. The home grid is one of the objects or one of the tools that you can access through the snap settings. But we will stick to the snaps this time. And as you can see, I will press here clear all. I usually press clear all so that whoever was using the snap settings before or for whichever project the snap settings used before, it will not be applied to your current project. So just clear all, especially if you are sharing computers. Next thing, I will turn on the grid points and the grid lines. So this means if the snaps are on and the grid points and grid line settings are also on, as you can see here, it is already showing you a snap indicator. A snap indicator means it is snapping on to which snap settings you are active. So since it is since the snap settings are for grid points and grid lines, that's why the snap preview is functioning accordingly. Let me close this. Now, as I move this object, as you can see, I can now move it precisely on the grid. As you can see here, if I click that, I drag it here, it is now moving precisely on the grid. Why? I can say that because actually the UCS values are precise. They don't have decimals or inaccurate or sorry, unprecise values. No, they don't have those decimal amounts. So I will just click and you will see they are just precisely positioned along the grid. Okay, so that is your snaps. But there are other snap settings here available which we can use later on. I'll turn off the snap by pressing S. So I'll go on to the next tool. But please remember the move tool. No, the move tool has partners such as the UCS and then your snaps. Close it there. Next thing is the rotate tool. I'll press letter E for the rotate tool. I'll turn off the snaps for my move tool snaps. And then as you can see, the rotate tool has a different gizmo but it is of the same um, let's say axis and direction. For example, the left and right for y-axis is the same here. The left and right is x-axis or the left and right sideways direction. Here, the x-axis is also the left and right of the teapot. Yeah, color coded in red, as you can see. The x-axis is in red. The y-axis is in green. The blue axis or the z-axis is in blue. So, again, the x-axis, sideways movement. The y-axis, which is forward and backward in the move tool. The y-axis also is the forward and backward leaning or bowing of the object. And then the z-axis, it's not elevation, it's not going up, but mainly the z-axis is the spin in place. That is for your rotate tool. The rotate tool also allows us to do multiple axis rotation, such as this. All I need to do is drag at the center of the axis selection, and then it will now allow me to tilt the object in any direction, X, Y, or Z. Okay, so that is your rotate tool, but then again, The rotate tool, just like the move tool, it also has its partners. When I select the rotate tool, as you can see here, the UCS also changes. If I start moving the rotate tool accordingly, for example, here, it's rotating on the y-axis. Yes, it is rotating along the y-axis. Now, as I rotate it along the y-axis, the partner for the rotate tool, if you will go down here, it is not anymore, or this slots, the x, y, and z, does not anymore represent coordinates. Since we are currently using the rotate tool, these are now angles or degrees. So if I type in here, for example, 45 degrees, and it will tilt the teapot accordingly on that axis, right? So if I type in 0, it will be straight, standing up. If on the x-axis I type in 30 degrees, it will also rotate along the x-axis onto that particular degree. And if I type in here, for example, 45 degrees on the z-axis, it will also turn accordingly. So these slots, XYZ slots, changes in accordance to the tool that you are currently active with. So right now, the move tool, these values, right now with the rotate tool, these values becomes degrees or angles. Okay. Next is also, okay, so the snap tool, or there is also another tool to help out with our rotate tool, and that is the snap tool, which is this, the angle snaps. Shortcut for the angle snaps is letter A. But before we use the angle snap, let us reset, no, our object by typing in 0, 0, 0, so that it will be standing up once more, or it is upright position. And then let's access the angle snap. I'll just right click the angle snap, and then you will see here there is a snap, or sorry, there is an angle. As you can see there is an angle settings here. So that means there's a 5-degree increment if the angle snap is turned on. So how is the 5-degree increment? For example, if I drag this, as you can see, it is indicating that there is a 5-degree movement on the y-axis. I'll do it again. Oops, sorry. 5, 10, 15, 20. As you can see, it is also giving you a count preview. And now we are in 25-degree in the z-axis. So you can also set this, let's bring that back to 0. You can also set the degree increment by, let's say, 45. If that is the angle that you have set, then it will just follow that. So every click that I do is going to be 45 degrees in any axis. So you can adjust that degree increments anytime you right click on your angle snap settings. Okay, so that is your angle snap for your rotate tool. Okay, so just reviewing, the snap tool, the rotate tool can also be accessed or have tool partners such as this, the degrees and angles settings, and also the angle snap. Um, Please No, if you are not going to be using the angle snap, you turn it off. If you are not going to be using the move snaps, you also turn it off because sometimes they work in conflict with each other. No, so it is advisable that you make it a discipline that if you're working with the move tool, you turn on the snaps when needed. If you're working with the rotate tool, you turn off the angle snap and you turn off your move so that you don't get hindered by the other snap objects function. Okay, there. Now, for the last is what we call the scale tool. The scale tool, the shortcut is R or WER. No? The W is for the move, E for rotate, and R for the scale. The scale tool, when you select it, the scale tool is more of a distortion or a distorting tool. Now, for example, if I distort it along the z-axis, it is called sometimes squashing, no? Or I can stretch it up more. That's what you do with the z-axis usually. You can also squeeze it in the y-axis, squeeze and stretch, no? Or expand. In the x-axis, the same effect. You can squeeze it in or you can stretch it out, squash and stretch. So those are the things that you can do with your scale tool. But also you can use this scale tool. You can do a proportionate scaling by clicking at the center, and from there you'll be able to decrease or increase the scale of the object, no? It proportionately. But here is the but part. Let me just clone copy this. Shift, click and drag. That's the clone. I'll just choose copy and I'll press OK. Okay. So here, for example, if let me just change the color of the object for the purpose of being recognizable. So for example, here, as you can see, let's type in, I'll put in 30 radius. So this is the modify panel, which is going to be our next topic on the next lesson. I'll just select the modify panel allows you to change object measurements and some other features that they have. Let's just focus on the measurement for now. So as we have said, the default unit is in centimeters. So that means this is 30 centimeter radius. So it's the same with the other object with the red teapot. Now I will use the scale on this one and look what will happen. There. The scale, or with the scale tool, I have resized this object. But the problem is, as per the actual measurement, it is still just 30 centimeter. So that's what scaling does. The scaling distorts the values, no, or scale of the object, therefore not following the indicated measurements within the modified panel, which should be followed. So that is why we will not be much using the scale tool on objects directly, but we will be using them more of, let's say, as a modeling tool. Okay, so that is your scale tool. Even as I squash this or stretch it, the the modify panel will not really represent it properly. Okay, so what do we do? For example, if I have squashed this and even stretched it as such, okay, so how do I return this to its original proportion or scale? How do I do that? I can just first type in here, for example, I can type in here 10 to reduce it to 10% of its original scale. And then I'll just go back, type in 100, and there it is. It is going to be back to its original proportion. So that is one way of dealing with distorted objects via scale tool. Okay? So those are your tools and your tool partners. So please be reminded that you can, let's say, you can use the tools, but be also reminded that as you are using the move, rotate, and scale tool, you also have options with these tool partners. The UCS coordinates, the degrees and angles settings, and then even your snaps. Okay, so with that, I'll see you on the next lesson.